All right, here we are. We have the argument between Korach and Moshe. And the Rebbe is explaining this in a Kabbalistic way. What exactly was going on? But it's in a way that's very relevant to us, to all of us. The argument between Korach and Moses is basically the argument with the Jewish people against all their leaders, and the same thing today. The argument or the unwillingness that we have to follow what the Rebbe says, which is very well based, because we see that by Korach, everybody listened to Korach, and it didn't seem that he really had much of a political point. So we see that, first of all, from the Torah itself, from what he says, what does Korach say? He says all the people are all holy, and they all all the Jewish people are all holy, and God is among them. Why do you elevate yourself over the Jews? That's what he said to Moses. And Rashi explains that he was saying that all the Jews were at Mount Sinai. We all heard God speak. We're all the level of prophets. We have prophecy. God spoke to all of us. And now that we have the Torah, also God is speaking to us all the time. Anytime a person reads the Torah, it's God speaking to him. Those are God's words that he's saying right now. So basically, we're the same thing as you, Moses. So why are you elevating us, yourself over us? So it's that at first glance is not so well understood, because, okay, so let's say that everybody knows the Torah and they're all holy, but Moses was a leader. Everyone saw that he was a leader, that he was telling everybody what's the right moves to make. So like I said yesterday, the Rebbe explains in another place that that's exactly what they were against, the type of leadership that Moses had, that to be a king over everybody. He was telling people to do things they don't want to do. And that's what they were saying. When we were in Egypt, we needed you. We couldn't get ourselves out of our mindset, of our slave mindset. We didn't think there was anything else. And you saved us, Moses. And then we left Egypt, and we got up to the river, to the Yam Suf, and we wanted to go back. We were afraid. We didn't know that God, saves us with these miracles. There were 10 plagues to smite the Egyptians, but there was a river. And Moses, you saved us. You got us over the river. You got us over the Yam Suf. And then at Mount Sinai, you brought us the Torah. Okay, but that's all over. That's over already. We don't need rulers that rule over every detail of our lives. We're not always wrong, Moshe, and you're always right. That was in the past before we got the Torah, but now that's what the Rebbe explains, which that's much more logical. They didn't want a type of a ruler like Moshe. They wanted Moses to be one of the guys, or like, one of the parties, political parties. Okay, but here we're going a little bit deeper. One of the issues that Korach took up with Moses was tzitzit. He said he took 250 members of the big judges, whatever, and he dressed them all in garments which were blue. And he said, Moshe, if these people have garments that are all blue, do they still need the blue strand in the tzitzit? And Moses said yes, and they all laughed at him. We don't need it. And that was one of the big points of the argument. How does that convince everybody? The fact is the law says that you do have to have a strand. The strands are something different, right? There's the garment, and then the strands come from the garment. That's the commandment of tzitzit. There's a garment, and then on the garment, on the corners of the garment, you put these strands. So one of them happens to be blue. So it doesn't make any difference. The law is that if you have a garment, it doesn't make any difference what color it is. You have to have on it tzitzit. What's the thing about the blue? And it convinced, it worked. Everyone said, wow, Moses is really washed up. Korach is right. So what exactly was the point? What did Moses, by saying that you have to have a blue string on a blue talit, why did that arouse everybody's excuse me? Why did that arouse everybody's the disdain? That suddenly Moses was like, you know, worthless in their eyes. What happened? Okay, so here we go. So I'm skipping one of the paragraphs. Ata, now let's understand what is this idea of the strings of the blue strings on the tzitzis. If you remember yesterday, we learned there's two types of godliness. There's one type of godliness that comes into the world, and there's one type of godliness which is pure godliness, which is can't be limited by the world. One type of godliness that, so to speak, is limited by the world. That's what makes all these distinctions and different types of worlds. And then there's one godliness, is pure godliness, pure godliness. Okay, we said in general, that's the idea of the Torah and of the commandments. The commandments are garments, that's like general. And the Torah, that's all these little details. That's like the strands. It's like the strands. Okay. So that's what Korach did. Korach, he picked a commandment and he said, it's a commandment. Let's say tzitzit. Tzitzit is a commandment which is representative of all the commandments. We said, remember the numerical value is 613. So it's representative of all the commandments. So let's take this commandment and let's make a fool out of Moses. And he succeeded, right? And he succeeded. So let's understand, why did he succeed? Because in the end, he was wrong. Moses said the law. How did that make Moses into a fool? And everybody knew what the law was. They knew what the law was. It's not that they made it. Why is it they all laughed at Moses? So here we go. Let's understand, what is this idea of the commandment of tzitzit and the strings of the tzitzit, and especially the blue string of the tzitzit. And like I said before, nowadays the Arizal, the Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, that he's like the father of modern day Kabbalah, and nobody doubts what he says. Everything, I mean, it's really quite amazing. I mean, nobody disagrees with what he said. So he said that nowadays we don't have the blue strand in the time of exile. In the time of exile, we don't have the blue. I think that began from the time of the temple was destroyed. But in any case, he said we don't have the blue string in the time of exile. Till Moshiach comes, we don't have. That's what the Arizal said. And like I said, there's a great rabbi. His name was the Rudzina Rav, and he said that he found there's a little snail that has this blue ink. I mean, how many snails have blue ink to it? And he said he found it, and there's the blue ink. It has all the criteria that are necessary for the. On the other end, the Arizal, the Rabbi Yitzchak Luri, was never wrong, never wrong, even though all this evidence seemed to be against him. So therefore, there are some people that use the blue strand, and there's a lot more that don't use it. Put on the blue strand. Chabad does not use the blue strand. Okay. Let's understand this idea of what is the blue strand of it. Why is it so important? In a techelis, the word techelet, which means this blue, color blue, techelet. Hu milashan tichle. It's from the language of destruction. It's from the language of destruction. What does it mean? Perish sheyichle b'yivar hara, that it destroys and it eliminates all evil, mikirbo, from within a person. Now, Chassidut explains that evil is synonymous, almost synonymous, with false egotism. False egotism. Thinking that you're something separate from God. That's called bad. So that's about everybody. Everybody has that. So that's right. This ra is what they call ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's everywhere, inside of every fiber of our being. A new type of bad. New type of bad. It's not bad you get punished, you go to hell for. You do the Torah, you do the commandments, you do it for yourself to go to heaven. That's called ra. You go to heaven, you get the rewards, all the things. But you should know that you're not really serving the Creator. You're serving yourself. Good, okay, because you have this motivation of going to heaven, so that means you're doing the right thing and you're saying the right thing. And you could be even feeling the right thing, right? Feeling the right thing. You feel an appreciation for God. You think about God, but you're really only doing it for yourself. So therefore, you get all the rewards. You go to heaven, don't worry. But according to Chabad Hasidut, points out that that's called Ra. It's called bad, because that's not the purpose of creation. That's sort of what brought Adam to eat from the tree. He saw the tray of good and bad. So he said, I'm going to call the shots. I'm going to do it on my own. And this thing last week that God told Moses, you make the decision, that was sort of to fix up the bad decision that Adam made. So making decisions is a very, very good thing. We have to do it, and that's why God created man, is to make the decisions. But if we make decisions based on our own egotism, it becomes a very fine line, as that's called Ra. So it says that the blue strand is there in order to enable us to make the right decisions, to think, what does God want? To get rid of the bad inside of us. Like it says, that you have to eliminate the bad which is in you. Like it says, it says in this paragraph of tzitzit, look in the very end of last week's Torah portion. It says, you should put on the tzitzit, you should look at them, you should look at it, and you will not go after, you will not stray after your hearts and after your eyes, that you prostitute yourself after them. Remember, we learned this last week. What is a prostitute? A prostitute, generally speaking, is a woman that's married and she wants to receive attention, right, the sexual attention from a mashpiach, from someone else. And attaches herself to strangers. The same thing the Jewish people. The Jewish people, they are supposed to be receiving from God. At Mount Sinai, we became married to God. God is the creator of all being. And God gives to us. God is our husband. Like it says, it says like a town of the Jewish people, also the tzaddikim, the Jewish people, they have taiva, one desire. What is their desire? God. That's what a genuine Jew is supposed to do and feel. That's Judaism. That's what's called Judaism. That's the Jewish feeling. The Jewish feeling is, I don't care about myself. I care only about my creator. Only about my creator. And that makes a healthy world. That makes a healthy world. Like anything, like a soldier. He doesn't care about himself. He just cares about his country, defeating the enemy. A musician. He doesn't care about himself. Does he get paid? Doesn't get when he's playing music, he cares one thing, only music. Sports, when he's a genuine sports, he's not caring about anything. Doesn't care about what the crowd says. He cares about one thing, to make that goal. Right? The goal. That's what it's supposed to be. The same thing with the Jew. We have a goal. The goal is to improve the world according to God's standards. And that should be our goal. That's what the Jew, we have only one goal. That was Adam, the first man. We're supposed to just do what God says. That's all. Like it says, Nafshiivisicha b'layla, like King David said, my soul desires you at night. That's what it means. You shouldn't stray after your heart and after your eyes, that you zone him after, and that you prostitute yourself after them. Because when you stray after your heart and you receive benefit from someone else, then that's called znut dome lazona. Then you become similar to a prostitute. Yeah, prostitute. Okay, no, I'm not that familiar with this, but I know a lot of people that are familiar with this, and they say a couple of psychiatrists, whatever, that deal with these people, and they say that a woman, how do you say, a licentious woman, that when she goes out and finds other men, so what is she thinking? What does she think? What does she think when another man, she has relations with another man? I got another point. Another, how do you say, heseg, an accomplishment. Oh, this is an accomplishment. Someone paid attention to me. I had a good time. I had pleasure. Right? I'm somebody. I mean something. I'm important. Right? I got another point. Like a rich person gets another $1 million in his bank account, and she gets another. In other words, all of a sudden, the person's identity changes, Your identity is not what I can do for God, but what the world can do for me. I become God. Right? I become God. And that's called a prostitute. All of a sudden, her whole thing changes, right? She's not thinking about her husband and what she can do for her husband and improve the relationship or improve the marriage, the family, right? She's thinking only one thing, pleasure. She has her pleasure. She has a. So it says that's what every single Jew is. That's what every single human being is. But when we were talking about Jews, every single Jew is. Are you thinking about the right goal? Have you got the right goal? Or are you just thinking about yourself? It says that's the purpose of the blue strand on the tzitzis is supposed to enable us to make the right choices, to not do things only for ourselves. That's what it means. That in the beginning it says that you should see it, the blue strand, and on the tzitzit, right? Look at that last paragraph of last week's Torah portion. The last paragraph in last week's Torah portion. That's the commandment of tzitzit. So it says you should see it and remember all the commandments and do them, and not go after your eyes and your heart, just like a prostitute. Then in the beginning, that she had only one the partner, her husband, and afterwards she receives from strangers, from others, which is not the case. Which is not the case if she was never married in the beginning. If she was unmarried and she receives from other people, this is not officially what's called the zona. This is not officially the level of a prostitute that's said in the Torah. Linyan Isur Kahuna. The translation of the word zona is prostitute. It means a lot of different things in different relationships. But as far as a Kohen is not allowed to marry a zona. A Kohen is not allowed to marry a prostitute. He's not allowed to. If it was a woman that had relations with men before she was married, that's not considered to be a zona. As far as this is concerned, a Kohen. But a woman that was married and she had a relationship with someone forbidden, that's called a zona, and she cannot marry, a Kohen cannot marry her. Also, the same thing above. Mishalora, or a person that did not see any light in his life, only choshech, a person that was born, like they say, tinuk shenishba. Tinuk shenishba. Tinuk shenishba is a child that was born in captivity among the Gentiles. Tinuk shenishba. So you see a Jew that's doing all sorts of sins, so you can say, well, that's a terrible person, or you can say that's a tinuk shenishba. Tinuk shenishba means that it's a child that he doesn't know any better. He doesn't know any better. That's like 99%, 99.9% of the Jews that do sins nowadays, that do bad things. It's only because of that. They simply don't know any better. Like they see religious people doing the things that, okay, they do their thing, I do my thing. It's not, they don't feel that there's any obligation. They're not connected to Hashem or to his commandments or to his Torah. There's no connection there, right? Never were connected. So that's not officially called a zona. A zona officially is called a religious Jew, like me and you. We're the ones that are the problems. Jews that are not religious, they're not officially called by this name of prostitute. The prostitutes are me and you. I don't know about you, but people like me, or me myself. I know what's better. I know what I should do, but nevertheless, you have a thought over here, an eye over there, the desire over this. You get a little bit angry, you get a little bit depressed, a little bit. That's called zona. We know better. We have a connection to Hashem, and nevertheless, once in a while, and it doesn't have to be big things. We're not talking about actually going on and stealing money or something like that, but desiring something that's not yours. Getting angry. It says anger that's one of the worst things. Who doesn't get angry? Similarly, or miyamav, a person that never saw light in his life, only darkness. So darkness seems to him to be light. When you do receive from God and you recognize God, like it says, you should know God and put it to your heart. You have to keep bad away from yourself. vasitem otam, like it says, and you do the commandments, and you want to serve God, but azai then velototur achrei, then you should refrain from going after your heart and after your eyes that you're zoning after. Then a person is called a prostitute. He's sort of like similar to a zona. Shasura labala, she becomes forbidden to her husband. Huh? What do you mean forbidden to her husband? A Jew that knows God and he strays away from God, so now he's forbidden to God. What does that mean? What does that mean? It says it's forbidden in the sense that you can't receive any revealed godliness unless you do tshuva. Okay, here's where the metaphor sort of breaks down a little bit. Here's the breakdown. Okay, so what's the way we want to say? What does it say? Ignorance is bliss. You don't know what the old saying in America. What you don't know can't hurt you, which is very stupid. What you don't know can't hurt you is very stupid, but there's a point to it, right? You don't know what you're supposed to eat, so you just eat, sugar and candy bars, so it's not going to hurt you because you think it's healthy. Of course, it's going to hurt you. But the thing is if a person, let's take the example of eating healthy. So you eat a person that never knows any better, and he was told, by all his friends that just eat whatever you want to. There was a thing like that in America for a while. Let people eat whatever they want. So eat whatever they want. The person says, I like to eat sugar. So he eats sugar, and he can't figure out why is his teeth falling out and why is he always nervous, all the time. He's always angry. Why he's not healthy? Because eating sugar, but he doesn't know any better, right? Okay, but he just doesn't know any better. What about a person who does know better? He's a dietitian, and he knows that sugar is bad, but nevertheless, he eats sugar. He eats a lot of sugar, and he prescribes sugar to eat people. That's a bad guy. That's bad. He knows what's healthy, and he's going after it. The same thing with Jews. A Jew that doesn't know any better about Torah commandments, right? He's a Reformed Jew. He's a conservative Jew. He doesn't know any better. So a person like that, you can't blame him. You can't blame him. He doesn't think there's any value to the Torah and the commandments. He doesn't think that it's binding to him. It's not talking to him. It's talking to other people. So a person like that, you can't blame him. You have to correct him. Like the guy who's eating sugar, you have to correct the person. You're doing wrong. You're hurting yourself. But you can't blame him and say, what an evil person. What he just doesn't know any better. But a person that doesn't know what Torah and commandments are, right? Like me, and he knows what commandments, and then, God forbid, I do things that are not what I'm supposed to do, and I know better. So it says that's bad news. That's bad news. What are you going to do now? So it says, well, Hashem made this thing called a reset where you can start from the beginning. That's called doing tshuva. Tshuva means you wipe off the slate. You say, listen, the reason I did those things was I was temporarily insane. God said, okay, I accept that. I accept that. I mean, that's one of the, part of the programs that I made for people. I remember once, a little digression, but I remember once, a long time ago, I saw my son was playing one of these video games, and it was two teams of soccer, one against the other. So there was one team that worked automatically, and then you had to, do your thing. And so according to what you did, your man, he ran. So my son went to the other room. I said, I want to see what's going on. So I took one of the men with the on the team that I had, and he got the ball, and I made him turn around and put the soccer ball into his net. And the net that he was supposed to be protecting, he put so it was part of the program. And everyone in the crowd run part of the program. One of the people in the crowd, and the whole crowd goes, oh. In other words, it was already programmed that there was going to be someone that's going to do this wrong thing, that's going to do the wrong thing. So the same thing, we're also programmed. We're programmed that we're going to do the wrong thing. And we're going to do the wrong thing. So God he set the program up that you could do tshuva. Oh, the crowd goes, oh, it was already programmed. So you can do tshuva. Of course, that's just a video game, and we're talking about reality. And that's what it says. Rabbi Yochanan says, greatest tshuva. It says, v'at zenita, even though that you did sins, that you prostituted yourself, you left your husband, you were unfaithful. Veshuvala, you can return to me. Oh, so this is what Judaism says. You did sins, you did purposeful sins, you can return to me. But the people that never had the fear of God at all, they're not officially called prostitutes. Or they never saw any light of God. They're not returning to God. They're just realizing that they were educated improperly. But really, but don't think you're going to get out of this, because it says that all the Jewish people are tzaddikim. It says every single Jew, his essence of his soul, desires God. If so what's the difference? We made this big distinction over here about Jews that don't know any better and Jews that do. Here the Rebbe is saying that every Jew knows better. And of course, the difference is there's what's called inside and outside. A person that is accepted more deeply, intimately into your personality, kirvas elokim, godliness, more then that person has to make a bigger effort that he is not like a prostitute, even in the smallest ways. Like, for instance, in desiring things that are permissible. That's the union of the blue. Right, you look in your bank account and you see that there's, instead of $10,000, you have $100,000. You feel good. That feeling of good, that's egotism. That if you lose money, all of a sudden you're all angry, and that's called egotism. You have to try to keep away from that. How do you keep away? Not so easy. You feel jealousy. You're jealous of somebody else. That you have to rid yourself of that. That's the whole idea of the blue strand. That it gets rid of all of this false egotism of the animal soul from what's called klipat noga, from nature. That's in the hainu in order to get rid of the bad, below taturu, and not to follow after your eyes and your heart. This is by means of the blue strand of the tzitzit. The blue strand of the tzitzit is what does it. How can it do that thing like that? Because it says that the blue is called kursaya dedina. It represents something that's there. It represents what's called the throne of judgment of God. The dinable, the dining bow, I don't know, dining the Nahora maybe, judgment of fire. I think so. From this, yumshach hayira liot yirat chet. The fact of the matter is that God himself, he's creating you, right? But he's very strict. God is very strict. And it's a good thing that he's strict, because if he wasn't strict, so, okay, so your heart doesn't, the valves don't work, big deal, Okay, so, your left eye doesn't work, your right eye. Okay, once in a while they put an eye in the place of a nose. No big deal. No, God is very, very exact. Very, very exact. And if it's with people, how much more so with the Torah? So God is very, very exact. True, God is also, you can make a lot of excuses. God accepts the excuses. We see those in Moses, the Jewish people sinned over and over again. And Moses said, come on, forgive them. What are the non-Jews going to say? And have mercy on them, and etc. And so God keeps listening to Moses. And Moses, Moshe can, good. But the fact is that God is very strict. The fact is God is very strict. Right? Let's just take a simple example. The golden calf. The Jewish people danced around the golden calf. What's so bad about what is so bad? What in the world, what does God care? No, God is a jealous God. Oh, come on. Really. So they danced around the golden calf. So they had a little fun. Okay, so, no, God said that's the end. I'm going to wipe them all out. I'm going to wipe them all out. Why are they going to? Because God is very, very strict. Just like God creates the world, are very exact. The laws of nature are very, very exact, right? You build an airplane and you leave out one bolt or something like that, the whole thing will fall apart. Right? The one little mistake in your calculations, the rocket ship, instead of going to the moon, it goes to Mars or something. right? That's God makes the world in a very, very, very exact way. Even how much more so with the Torah. So when a person thinks to himself, one second, if I go against what God says, it's like making a little hole in one of my veins and one of my arteries and one of my, and in this, it's drawing big fear. Namely, what are you afraid of? Not getting punishment. You're afraid of the sin. You're afraid of going against God. Il dina, like it says, if it wasn't for God's severity, lo eshkach ba'alma, there wouldn't be anything in the world. Everyone would just do whatever they wanted to. And she'll look over the ube'emes, and really, ikar pirish yira, that's what it means, fearing sin. Yira mean that you're afraid of doing against what God wants, not because God's going to punish you, which could be true, but that's not what you're afraid. God is so good that you're afraid of doing anything bad to him. Sharahu marmi mavas, because bad is worse than death. Like it says at the mavet vetara, like God said, I have put in front of you they say the good and the bad, and I'm sorry, the good life and good, and death and bad. Just 1 second. Here we go. Starting again this thing. 1 second, excuse me. Hello. אני תשמע, תצלצל בעוד שעה. אוקיי, אני באמצע שיעור. טוב? תודה. Okay, so therefore, the blue represents God's severity. Severity. You don't want to make God angry. Why? Because God is so good. How can you make him angry? How can you do something like that? And it's like, in diplomacy, there's all these laws of like what to do when you're in front of the Queen of England, and what to do when you're in front of the whatever is the King of Saudi Arabia. Do you offer your hand to shake hands? Do you say hello? Do you hug the person? Do you smile? You have to be very, very careful. Not that they're going to make war against you, but just they're good people. Let's say they're good people, and they're powerful people, and therefore you don't want to go against protocol. Right? Forget about the repercussions. Is because there's good people, you don't want, you don't want to mess up relationship. That's the whole thing with God. God is creating us. God is the ultimate king. He's the ultimate sultan, whatever you want to call it. He's the sultan from the sholet. He's the ultimate ruler. You don't want to do anything against God. That's called God's severity. It was just like doing the commandments. Your soul gets lifted up high. The same thing is by means of doing bad. It says, "Nafshi oiviticha oivecha yikalenu betoch kafakela." Remember we learned about this? I need Bruce Ranan. Remember we learned about that, like a young cedar tree. It says a young cedar tree, it says that it's like the commandments. The commandments are things that are very low in the ground. But if you take like a tree, a young cedar tree, it's very, very tall. Let's say it's 20 feet tall. It's very thin and pliable. You put it all the way down, put a rock on it, and it slings it up high. That's what the commandments are. The commandments come down low, but they're slinging up. Well, the same thing is also with a sin. When a person does a sin, he says he's thrown in what's called the slingshot. Slingshot. You ever see these slingshots there's the slingshot that you have, between two poles, you have a rubber band slingshot, but there's also a slingshot that you swing it around, and you throw it far away. Well, it says that type of a slingshot, that's what's called kafakela. That's what's called the pocket of the kela of the sling. And when a person does bad, so the slingshot, the bad deed shoots him far away. Ma'od mod me'or pnei Hashem. Until shadin v'mishpat shenimshach alachot, that the judgment which is drawn down on a sinner, mikursaya the dinner from God's throne, zel kamo refuah. This is a healing. Like it says, mutav l'daini b'leisei b'alma l'dina. It's worth better to be judged in hell and go to heaven. I told you the story about it. It's a story in the Talmud. I think it's in Avodah Zorah. Look and see. Avodah Zorah, tiny. It says over there that there was Yerovam ben Elisha ben Avua. Elisha ben Avua, he did a lot of sins. He was a big genius Talmud Chacham. He was one of the 4 people that went into Pardes together with Rabbi Akiva, and he was a transition. But it ended up he did a lot. He went off the track, and he did a lot of sins. So it says that he deserved to go to heaven for all the good things that he did and all the Torah that he learned, but he also deserved to go to hell because of all the bad things that he did. Now it says that one moment in hell is like 70 years on the dentist's chair without Novocaine, with whatever they have, and constant pain and suffering, incredible, all the pain in the world is one instant in hell. An instant hell. He says, no, that's not so good. So he said, well, this Elisha ben Avua, this Acher, he did a lot of sins, but he couldn't go to hell because he did a lot of good things, but he couldn't go to heaven because he did a lot of sins. So he's stuck in the middle. So he had one, I think it was Rabbi Meir, prayed for him, and he went to hell. He said, well, how could I did him a favor? I sent him to hell. Hell, you know what hell is? He says, yeah, it's worthwhile to be judged in hell in order to go to heaven. In other words, hell is what they call, they call purgatory. They call it purgatory. And hell refines the person's soul. What does it mean, refines a person's soul? So it's like this. When a person does sins, usually because they feel good. A person does sins because it feels good. And if it doesn't feel good, then he does sins because he wants to rebel against God. And that feels good. It makes him feel good to rebel against God. Okay, so that good feeling gets a person, like Pavlov's dogs. You ever heard the story with Pavlov's dogs? Pavlov, he was one of these behavioristic guys. So he took a bunch of dogs, and before he would give them food, he would ring a little bell. It would ring a little bell, and then got to the point where he would not give them food, but just ring a little bell. And he noticed that when he would give them food, put the food in front of them, they would salivate. Saliva would come into their mouth, preparing them to eat, right? Preparing them to eat their food. But when he rang the bell, right, they would also salivate to the point where he would just ring the bell, and they were already so much in the world of eating, getting pleasure from the food, that the saliva would already come, even though there was no food. There was no food. And the same thing is what happens with us when we do a sin. So you get used to it and you get to expect it, and you're not living in God's world anymore. You're living in your world. So that you're always waiting for that bell to ring. You're always waiting for that thing. So therefore, your whole personality and your whole soul is trapped. It's shot far away from godliness. And that's what the people, I've had contact with people that are addicted. There's all sorts of terrible addictions that there are in the world, the drugs, the anger, all things and people that are addicted, they can't get out because they can't feel that there's an alternative. Right? People that are smokers, they're addicted to smoking. They see thousands of people around them that aren't smoking. They can't get out of it because it's just taken over their soul. So he says it's worthwhile all of the pain of hell in order to get rid of this false ego. And when the false ego is gone, then automatically it's godliness, because God is everywhere. Therefore, the whole purpose of this judgment is kindness and not revenge, that God is, severe and he destroys all the non-believers. The whole purpose of the whole thing is to purify a person. It could be there's people that just are not correctable. They're just, Nazis, whatever there's these people who nothing will correct them. Like it says in Heichaltzu, etc. Even this throne of judgment, which is above the diamond, that they over there in God's throne of judgment, they judge what's called capital punishment. This is a tremendous good for a person. It shows that God cares about us. That's why it says it's better for him with Elisha ben Avua. It was better for him to be judged and suffer the pains of hell, because Sin is worse than death. Again, what's the point? We have no idea how good God is. We have no idea how good the world is. We have no idea how good the world is. It's covered over. We have no idea how good man is. We have no idea how good man is. That's why these religions that say we're sinners and everybody's a sinner and you have to have this person, he's going to cure you. That's a big lie, a huge, huge, terrible, evil lie. Man is good. But the egotism that's covering over, that egotism has to be corrected or ideally removed. But once it's corrected and removed, then automatically we see the good. It's not that it's a choice between good and bad. It's good is something that it really exists. Bad is the thing that you have to choose. God made the world, though, that the good is so covered over that we're always being bombarded with impulses to do what's bad. But if we just ignore those impulses and not put our mind to it, then what's the real fact is that everything is essentially good. But if a person makes the wrong choices for whatever reason it is, and it depends which reason it is, if it's from ignorance, whatever, so he has to be cleaned up. And that's the whole idea of hell. And it goes without saying that a person that did all sorts of sins, but he didn't know, he didn't know he was Jewish. And he ate all these not kosher foods and he did all these, that worked on Shabbat, but he didn't know. So obviously it's easier to clean that person up than a person that he didn't know. It's more rooted in his personality. Lochach, therefore, and that's this level, that's this idea of the blue strand. From that is drawn to that you want to do what God says and you won't go after your eyes and your heart. The rabbis say that this blue is similar to the sea. The sea, it says the blue is similar to the sea, and the sea is similar to the sky, and the sky is similar to the throne of God's glory. That's what it says. The sea, that's the level of malchut of atzilut. That's another word for God's mouth, the power that creates the world. And it says that the sea is similar to the heavens. What's that? That's the surrounding level, which is above the creation. Above the creation. Malchut of atzilut is how God creating the world. And that's similar to the heavens. The heavens are above God creating the world. That symbolizes, like it says in the Zohar. And because regarding the sea, it says that the sea is standing above them. In the first temple, King Solomon built this big laver that the Kohanim, the priests, would wash their hands from. It was called the Sea of King Solomon. And it was standing on the top. And also the same thing it says by the visions of Isaiah. It says that the sea was standing above them, a sea of reality. Hine kasiv, it says, Benoseha amachanot, yifrusu beged kalil techelet milmaila. It says the Jews, they would travel in the desert, right? They would travel in the desert. So when they were traveling in the desert, they had wagons, and they would put things in the wagons and carry them, especially the boards. The boards were tremendously heavy. They would carry the boards, and they would carry the drapes and everything like that. But the vessels weren't carried by wagons. They were carried by the shoulders. The Kohanim there were posts, and the Kohanim carried these things on their shoulders. It says, but what? So it was in front of everybody could see. This is the ark. The ark was in the Holy of Holies. You can't just carry it. So it says they would take. There was a big drape, which was blue, and they put this blue drape over the ark. So it says they would put it on a beged kalil techelet of milamayla above. Namely, minsua mishkan, when the tabernacle would travel in the desert, that the desert, we talked before, the desert, that's the place where all these external, it's a place where man doesn't dwell. The desert is a place of death. And the job of the Jewish people was to travel through the desert and bring life to it. So when they would travel in the desert, which that's the dwelling place of all these external forces, they would cover the vessels of the tabernacle, especially the ark, with garment of blue, which that's the surrounding level of a malchut, which we talked about before, of God's creative force, which this is the makif akasha. This is what's called the severe. Techelet means it's powerful, it destroys. It destroys what's called and blinds the eyes of the external forces. So therefore, they would travel through the desert. And that's this idea of the blue. The blue represents this surrounding power of God, that when a person thinks about it, he stops doing sins. Why would that stop you from doing a sin? Because a person, instead of doing a sin, let's say a person wants to go and steal. So before he steals, suddenly he thinks, 1 second, I'm being created by God. Why is God creating me in order to be a thief? That's why I'm being created, is in order to be a thief. I mean, God has laws. Here we see my body is created according to laws of nature. God also has laws. And one of the laws is I shouldn't steal, right? Shouldn't steal. It's not one of the 10 Commandments. The 10 Commandments is not to kidnap. Another, but God doesn't want me to steal. Suddenly he feels the severity that God really cares and he really gets angry if you steal. Don't do it. He says that blinds the eyes of the external. Suddenly he says, listen, I can't do it. You want to call it in English your conscience. You call it whatever you want, but its truth is shining out. But its severity, it's severe. It's very severe. Well, no, I can't do that. I can't do it, right? Okay, as this is what we're going to talk about, God willing, more tomorrow. That's the blue strand of the tzitzit. And what has that got to do with Korach? What's it got to do with Korach warring against Moses? That we're going to find out tomorrow. In the meantime, we know that Hashem helps us to do what's right. And if we do what's wrong, Hashem also helps us. But there is definitely right and wrong. And God's blue, this power of blue, tchelet, it helps us to turn away from bad. And if we did do bad, to regret it and clean ourselves up. And God helps us. Let's now do the Devar Malchut. Here we go. 1 second. 1 minute.